What's up everyone? What a crazy year this has been. It's completely flown by. But now it's time to summarize 2024's big and small screen releases. This year around I found myself a lot more black-pilled than usual. A lot of the new releases simply don't appeal to me anymore, so several entries on this list are going to be very quick. But with that out of the way, let's get into Movie Cavalcade of 2024. Dune Part 2. This movie was, in my opinion, a masterpiece. When Part 1 came out, I was worried as hell that the second part wouldn't deliver on the hype and end up being a major disappointment. But holy shit, they knocked it out of the park. A story once thought impossible to put on the silver screen. Of course they had to cut some stuff out, but the overall vibe is right on point, and I'm so happy that it got the attention it deserved. Denis Villeneuve is one of my favorite sci-fi directors, and he was absolutely the man for the job. He has already started working on Part 3, which sources state will cover Dune Messiah, after which he is stepping down. No matter how it goes from there, he got the ball going gloriously, and we have already had our first spin-off, which we'll talk more about later. But I can spoil right now, this is movie of the year, by a mile. And as a little side note, every other great IP has been dragged out back and shot to death. This is the last fucking thing I have left to be excited for. Please just let me have this one, okay? Deadpool and Wolverine. If you're a fan of Deadpool, you get more of the same. Tons of fan service shoved in there for the sake of being fan service. Ryan Reynolds is always good as the merc with the mouth, but he needed to hold his reins a little bit. And Hugh Jackman is back as Wolverine, and he delivers as always. So, in a nutshell, it's fan service deluxe with a few heartfelt moments in there, but it's overall pretty meh. Civil War. Well shot, well acted. That's about it. The movie barely has plot or characters, so we follow a gang of war photographers traveling across America during an ongoing civil war. Texas and California have rebelled against the government, who is apparently bad. That's all the backstory you're gonna get. I would have loved some more exposition and background on why things are the way they are, and I get it. These people are here to document what's going on, and the viewer can form their own opinion. Well, I would have loved some facts before throwing my hat in the ring. Without the backstory, it just boils down to war and bad. There's a great foundation here, but nothing really gets built on it. Alien Romulus. Okay, this one was something. The first, say, 30 minutes to first hour was great. Good and fresh world building, some interesting characters, and gorgeous sets. The aesthetics were right on the dot for a Ridley Scott world. Really grimy and lived-in, analog type of sci-fi. Awesome. Then, once the plot gets going, it's a memberberry-filled thrill ride with no more substance than a single grape. The constant callbacks, references, and verbatim quotes have no place but to please the Star Destroyers! I'm gonna come! crowd. And I can't stand that type of shit. I really feel talked down to when I want to enjoy myself. So, in all, the experience left me pissed off beyond belief because it started so fucking great. The movie starts with a recovering team discovering the remains of the Nostromo 20 years after the original Alien movie takes place. Just like the Death Star, it was completely vaporized. 2, 1. But they find entire sections intact. Not to mention, it got blown up in bumfuck nowhere in deep space, presumably scattering all the pieces in millions of different directions, keeping momentum for 20 years? No, it's all in a small debris field. And not only that, they find the corpse of the original alien, which, I might add, was jettisoned millions of kilometers away from where the Nostromo got destroyed. And turns out the fucker is alive!
Somehow Palpatine returned.
I could buy that they find it somehow. Fine. And extract its DNA or clone it or whatever, and that's what set the whole thing off, right? But no, it gets up after 20 years of floating in space after being shot with a harpoon, then to be vaporized by the Narcissus engines. I know xenomorphs are tough, but come on, I can only suspend my disbelief so much. So the overall experience was really sour, considering how good it felt in the start, and how let down I was of such missed potential. I will probably say this is the worst theater experience I've had this year. Fuck this movie. Joker, Folie du. I skipped it. I was skeptical towards the first movie, but ended up loving it. I was skeptical towards the sequel, and felt my skepticism was justified. From what I've heard, it's a fucking train wreck. One quote I saw described the movie as being complete opposite from the first one. Well, it doesn't take a genius to figure out what the complete opposite of good is. Venom, The Last Dance. Skipped it. Wasn't a fan of the first one, hated the second one, why would I bother with the third? Sure, Tom Hardy has his funny moments, Eddie and the symbiote have a chemistry, but it's the wrong IP for it. Like, yeah, sure, okay, they hype up Null. Fuck Null, he had his run, he's done. I can't get behind it. They completely, as I said during the Carnage review, they completely misunderstand the characters. I don't give a shit. Madam Web, skipped it as well, and have nothing to say except why. These dumpster fires are just money laundering schemes, and they are not even trying to hide it anymore. It will go down as one of the biggest flops in history. And speaking of flops, Kraven the Hunter. Damn Sony, you just keep hitting the fucking home runs with these box office nuclear holocausts. Same as with every other Sony slop this year, I skipped it. Unless it's an adaptation of Kraven's Last Hunt, which was fucking amazing, I'm not interested. Oh wait, you need Spider-Man for that. Borderlands, skipped it as well. I guess I'm just blackpilled into oblivion with all these pointless adaptations. I loved Borderlands 2 over 10 years ago, and that's just it. The hype is no more. Had they struck while the iron was hot, I bet they could have made a success with this one. This one flopped harder than any of the previous mentioned movies, with a budget of 120 million plus marketing, only to gross $30 million worldwide. Yikes. The Apprentice. This one I liked. Sebastian Stan delivered a fantastic performance as Donald Trump, and holy shit, Jeremy Strong as Roy Cohn. Yeah, both of them felt super believable. Sometimes it felt like they spliced in real footage of the two, but it went by so quickly, I actually couldn't see if it was them for real or the two actors, and that is something. Yeah, if you want a nice and decent quality biopic of who Donald Trump was before he started running for president, I highly suggest checking this out. And now for the TV series. Fallout. Video game adaptations rarely work. This was one of those rare occasions where it actually did. Fallout is a hard franchise to translate to a non-game format, but they pulled it off fairly well. The characters are likable, the story is serviceable. I felt invested the whole way through. Great post-apocalyptic fun. Masters of the Air. Another banger from the same producers that gave us Band of Brothers and The Pacific, who are amazing shows in their own right. Band of Brothers actually holding a place in my heart as one of the greatest shows of all time. Masters of the Air surely can't live up to that bar, but it's still a great show with great characters. You follow the men from the 100th Bomb Group, and the B-17 missions had some of the highest casualty rates in the war, and it was one of the shittiest jobs you could have been dealt. But someone had to do it, and these men did. The show had amazing attention to detail, so if you're into war dramas and you enjoyed Band of Brothers and The Pacific, Masters of the Air is a must-see. Echo. Sucked. Not even Vincent himself could carry this pile of garbage.
Why are you doing this?
Fuck you. It actually featured a moment that like cracked my brain. I just couldn't stop laughing. I was laughing like a person in a straitjacket would laugh.
Are you an Indian superhero? What the hell?
What the fuck? The Boys, Season 4. I love The Boys. Season 1 and 2 are a great comic book adaptation that even surpasses the source material by a mile. It's great superhero satire where all the tropes are hung out to dry. It had great writing, great characters portrayed by great actors, and it came around just when the superhero fatigue started to settle in. Season 3 started to falter a bit, but I still liked it overall. I felt disappointed by its final episode though. Season 4, on the other hand, is kinda the way around. Overall, a pretty weak season, but the last episode I liked. The writing have for sure gone down significantly, and it's turned its attention to more shock and gore, and almost became the very entity it's parodying. All the great characters are shadows of their former selves, a classic case of flanderization. Apparently, Season 5 is going to be the final season, and if that one turns out okay, I might look back on The Boys as a show that had a fantastic start, a rough middle, and an okay ending. A tale as old as time, I suppose. But I'm not keeping my hopes up, though. I can't go a single year without talking about the fucking franchise I hate most in this entire world. But here we go. The Acolyte. As I said last year, fuck Star Wars and fuck Disney. They can burn in hell for all I care. I took the book pill and said farewell to these hot garbage, vanity-driven shitfests a long time ago. Didn't even bother to watch it. From what I've seen, I feel I did the right choice. So many screw-ups with the lore. Like this character bleeding a kyber crystal instantly. You need to focus your rage into the crystal to turn it red. Vader tried for days and barely survived pulling it off. This bitch does it accidentally. Also, if a crystal is so misaligned that it's poking out of the hilt, that saber is blowing up when you turn it on. Or these space witches who apparently cracked the code to manipulate midichlorians before Plagueis even thought of it.
Power of one, the power of two, the power of many.
Then they throw in Darth Plagueis at the end, looking like a fucking cave coomer.
It's high time I emerge from my cum cocoon. I grow tired of eavesdropping and masturbating to the sounds you all make.
Jesus Christ, all right.
Higo the Mask was an aristocrat. He may have done some spelunking in his spare time, but this is not how you portray one of the most important puppet masters in the franchise. The Bad Batch, Season 3. The final season of a show I never cared too much for. There were great episodes in there, with really cool concepts, but the show rarely stayed with them for long. This show sheds light on another issue with Star Wars, as an IP. The different levels of canon. Allow me a moment to explain. So the movies and live-action projects are the main canon. Everything happening in them is tier 1. All other visual media, such as cartoons, are also canon, but at tier 2. So should an inconsistency occur between the cartoons and the movies win out. Same thing applies to the books, which are then tier 3. For example, the character of Asajj Ventress dies at the end of Dark Disciple. She was dead and buried, but somehow Ventress returned.
Somehow.
Dead characters come back, does nothing, then leaves. I found it hilarious how they edited her wiki page, stating that she sacrificed herself saving Quinlan Voss, and that her body was later laid to rest in the waters of her clan's village on Dathomir. However, she lived on during Clone Force 99's struggle against the Galactic Empire.
Somehow.
So this either A, completely decanonizes Dark Disciple, which was a good book, and to just throw that out of the window is really disrespectful to the writers and to the readers who read the fucking thing. Or B, it keeps the book canon, but you can't have your cake and eat it too. So then you completely dismiss her noble sacrifice at the end of the book, ruining it either way, so you lose no matter which. And all of this, in the end, for a quick cameo that meant nothing for the story it took place in. So what was the goddamn point? Just uprooting established lore for no reason except to build hype and not deliver. Another quick example, in Tales of the Empire, they retconned the TIE Defender project to be a design of Morgan Elsbeth, a Night Sister witch who should have no business designing experimental starfighters, but whatever. Thrawn makes an appearance while he was still an admiral. So presumably during his time as commander of the 96th Fleet. In the book, Thrawn Treason, it is clearly established that he didn't meet Captain Pelion, his right-hand man in Heir to the Empire, until his promotion to Grand Admiral and command of the 7th Fleet. I get it. It can be hard to get such small details right, but the overall message is that they name-dropped Pelion to get a reaction from the fans without thinking of the context. It has since been retconned that Pelion served briefly in Thrawn's 96th fleet before being transferred to the 3rd fleet, where he was when he met Thrawn. They could have just name-dropped Commander Pharaoh, who worked under Thrawn at the time. It would have served the exact same purpose, and they wouldn't have had to jump through all these hoops. But remember, Captain Pelion, he was in the books! You know him! You like the books!
I know what that is!
It's also designed and rigged, and everything can be changed on a whim. One day a character is dead, the next day the character is alive, i.e., no consequences, no stakes. It's like they punish you for reading the books and trying to keep up. Anyway, yeah, the series finale was pretty mid. I managed to get a sick call out though. Så kommer taken här nu bara... Sir, the facility on Atlantis. We lost communication. Typical. Now we'll have to redistribute funds to Project Stardust.
And this franchise, please.
Watch the line come. It's gonna come.
Governor Tarkin.
Hemlock's failings have cost us enough. Shutter this facility internally and redistribute...
Oh my fucking god! Jag är så sjuk i huvudet! Terminator 0. I rarely watch anime, except when it really hooks me. The Terminator franchise is just another IP that's been dragged into the backyard and shot to death. But Zero actually tries something different. They knew to keep familiar visuals, all while pushing the envelope for what this franchise can do. It's a great mix of existential science fiction and action, and I was hooked instantly. They actually get to pick the brains of a defense AI and finally learn what makes them tick instead of humanity bad. They explore the concept of another defense AI that could oppose Skynet. They were going to do this in the Sarah Connor Chronicles, but they canned that show before that scenario could play out. So it's nice to actually see it finalized here. It actually becomes sort of meta in a sense that the characters are aware of how many times Skynet has tried to change the past, and the Resistance tries to stop it, much like how many times the same story has been rebooted in the movies, time and time again. So the characters in the show are literally out to change the status quo. So instead of humanity either trying to stop Judgment Day or accepting that it cannot be stopped, Zero asks the question if humanity deserves to survive in the first place. I don't want to spoil any details, but finally, Terminators are scary again. This is not another super prototype, but just a plain classic T-800, showing that old school rules. Taking place in Japan in the late 90s, meaning there isn't as much access to firearms as in the US, meaning it's harder for the protagonists who are being hunted to fight back. You also get to see some creative ways for the Terminator to complete its mission. Again, no spoilers, but yeah, it's super fresh to see something besides shoot gun and ragdoll. Sure, they do that too, you kinda have to in this franchise, but it's not all it's got going for it. It wasn't perfect. They asked you to suspend your disbelief in some areas, and it ends with a pretty vague open ending. But overall, it was a really nice short series that finally shook some life into a dead franchise. Avatar: The Last Airbender. I watched the first episode. It's better than the M. Night Shyamalan movie for sure, but it still falls short to recapture the magic of the original. A next to impossible task. Shyamalan tried to squeeze 20 episodes of the show into one movie and it sucked. Netflix tries the same, but spreads it out into 8 episodes. It begs the question to why. The Netflix version doesn't really add anything to the story. They changed some stuff around, but unfortunately that makes the show fall into the tell don't show camp. All in all, it's a more competent live action remake than say what Disney has been up to for the past few years. But if you want to check out Avatar, just watch the animated show. It's perfect. Dune Prophecy. Our first spin-off. I had enormous hype for this show since I loved the movie so much. Did it deliver? Well, yes and no. It takes place 10,000 years before the events of the first book, and we get to see some flashbacks to the Butlerian Jihad and how the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood started their long-term plan to bring about the Kwisatz Haderach and lay their seeds to the Missionaria Protectiva. The stage is also set for the blood feud between House Atreides and House Harkonnen. All very cool stuff, but not executed as well as I know it could have been. For example, the Desmond Hart character works as sort of a proto-Paul Atreides, being both Harkonnen and Atreides bloodline. And when in a seat of power, he demonstrates the same risk of having such a charismatic leader. I haven't read any of Brian Herbert's books, but apparently this guy's identity is a big deal in those books, so... Yeah, but I know a lot of people were pissed off about his appearance in the beginning, but then... as it was revealed, like, who he is actually related to, everyone was like, oh yeah, okay. So, all in all, the show looks great. Everything looks and feels like it's part of the Denis Villeneuve Dune films. And that, to me, was the most important part. The actors did a great job. The problem is in the script. There simply isn't a real hooker to get you hyped up. I like my sci-fi slow and steady, but for an epic such as Dune, there kinda needs to be moments like this. I sincerely hope we get a spin-off set during the Butlerian Jihad instead of right after it. I feel like that would have been a more compelling story to tell. Arcane, Season 2. Season 1 of Arcane was fantastic. Great natural character development, really balls-to-the-walls art style. Never really liked League of Legends, but I got sucked into the show anyway. Season 2, I would say, had higher highs but lower lows. Some moments felt rushed, and some things that were built up to be really important were left unexplained. It never really ruined the show for me, and I will still consider Arcane to be a great show, and I definitely welcome more. If this is all we get, then I highly recommend both Season 1 and 2. X-Men, 97. Definitely a huge load of nostalgia bait, but you know what? It's surprisingly engaging. There are some stinker moments and retcons here and there, but the overall feel was really good. They try some cool things, some work, some don't, but it's nice to see the 90s Marvel animated universe have a continuation. Have some decent continuation. They knew its core audience has grown up, and the show had to evolve to match. This is a show that can balance fan service with comic book fun and grit, proving that it is possible to do it. Check it out. House of the Dragon, Season 2. This season felt really undercooked. I didn't outright hate it, but there wasn't a real payoff for all that build-up. Really slow-burning season, considering we are supposed to be at the start of an all-out war. Daemon being stuck at Harrenhal tripping balls the whole season was a bit of a letdown. His scene in the finale was awesome, but I wish there was more to him this season. And that is the best example, but I feel like most of the characters had that same vibe to them. Cool, but could have been a lot more. Definitely needed to kick things into higher gear a lot sooner than they did. The Penguin. This show has no right to be as good as it is. Colin Farrell is once again incredible as Oswald the Penguin Cobblepot. A real nitty-gritty gangster drama, all set in the hellhole that is Gotham City. Following the events of Matt Reeves' The Batman, Gotham was flooded and the de facto crime lord Carmine Falcone was killed. Now his old territories are up for grabs, and Oswald tries to play the various underbosses against each other to get himself a slice of the pie. Just as in the movie, they nailed the aesthetics of Gotham. The characters feel real and believable. The Penguin can be a hard character to nail down. He can be a real parody villain or a serious crime lord, and that balance is hard to walk, but they got it. He is perfect. He is the character come to life. I definitely don't want to spoil it, so I'll just say this. This for sure is a contender for best live action series based off a comic book I have ever seen, and that should tell you plenty. So, to summarize, movie of the year, Dune Part 2. No contest. They knocked it out of the goddamn park. TV show of the year. Harder to pick. While both Arcane and The Penguin were probably the top contenders. Maybe X-Men 97. But I'm sorry, The Penguin, it just takes the cake. So that has been my movie cavalcade of 2024. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you all next time.